Thank you so much, Lindsey Scoggins, for coming in and for being interviewed on my podcast. I'm really happy to be sitting down with you here today in New York. And yeah, I would love to dive right in. Maybe you can tell my audience a little bit about yourself and your company to start.
Sure. My name is Lindsey Scoggins. I have a fine jewelry brand named Lindsey Scoggins Studio, and we really focus on the custom process and made-to-order pieces. And we have been around for about 7 years now and started really, really, really small and have evolved to a brand that really caters to self-purchasing women and women that are looking for really special heirlooms to celebrate something significant or just because, and of course, really beautiful engagement rings. And yeah, we're based here in New York, and yeah, that's
great. And is it like fine jewelry, would you say? Like, how would you describe the style of the jewelry pieces that you're making?
So it is fine jewelry. It's actually very, very high end. We have some of our more iconic pieces that have developed over the years. Most of those have evolved from experiences that I've had making custom pieces for clients. And we use all 18 karat gold. It's all manufactured here in New York City. You get colorless diamonds, natural diamonds. We do not do lab grown, which is a whole different animal. But few years, our customers really come into focus. And it's really nice to see because it really reflects kind of my intention always was to be very design focused designer, which is kind of, it sounds funny, but a lot of jewelry out there is kind of focused on a more generic kind of essentials pieces, and we really focus on that like step up for clients.
Like more so making a statement, would you say? Like
a lot of statements, yeah, things that women are like, well, I have this tennis bracelet, but I think I'd really rather have something to complement it that is, a little more significant and sentimental to me. That's more custom. Yeah.
So I want to get into how you got into jewelry. You can maybe describe when you were younger, like what drew you to accessories, or maybe it was something in your educational path. I'd love to hear that story.
Sure. Getting into jewelry was kind of a surprise to me because I studied architecture in college, and I always knew I wanted to do something creative, but I had this pull towards technical stuff, engineering and that kind of thing. My grandmother was a painter and my dad's a business owner. My other grandmother was a really wonderful seamstress. And the painting and the sewing, kind of what we call today side hustles, because they worked, for a bank and a refinery for their full-time job. So I always knew I wanted to do something creative. And so I studied architecture. That's what I found in college. And then the company that I started working for, I was with Zale, what used to be called Zale Corporation is now Signet. They were recruiting on campus my senior year, and I wanted to apply because I was like, I didn't know you could work in jewelry that way. I didn't know it's not a thing that people think about when they go to college. Like, I want to get into jewelry because it's such a niche
Especially you were
category.
Studying architecture.
Yeah.
All of your education was like building structures, yes. I would imagine.
So it's lots of physics, and I went to Texas A&M, so it's lots of engineering and really, environmental design. So it's all about engineering and the psychology of what you're building and how people feel in it, and really cool stuff that I never got to do in my career. But the ironic thing is, so Zales was recruiting, and I wasn't allowed to interview because I wasn't getting a degree in business. And so that irritated me. And so I happened to be moving to Dallas. They were based in Dallas. And so I happened to have agreed to move to Dallas with a friend. And she got a job at their corporate office. And so I met her. She had to train in a store before moving to the corporate office for a few weeks. And I met her for lunch one day, and I met her manager. And we talked a little bit. And he called me the next day, and he said, I know you're probably going to go to grad school for architecture, but like, would you just like to work in the store for a little bit while you're thinking about it? And I was like, I don't know. But I said yes, because I needed a job. And so I started working in the store. We had a bench jeweler in the back. And I spent so much time with him. And within 6 months, I was at the corporate office. And so that's how I got there. And then I spent almost a decade there and really did everything you could possibly do in the jewelry world. And I always knew I wanted to start my own brand. I just didn't know when it was going to be. And so that's what prepared me for this.
And did you feel that when you were younger, did you always feel that entrepreneurship was accessible to you? Did you feel any sort of challenge or barrier, maybe going through schooling or where you grew up? Like, were female business owners totally out of the question, or was it something that you knew, like, oh, I'm going to start a business? Like, my dad was a business owner.
I wasn't thinking, as I was going through the first few years of my career, I wasn't thinking that. I really loved working in a corporate office and working with we had about 1,000 people in the corporate office and thousands of stores all over the country. And I loved that atmosphere most of the time. So it didn't occur to me it was before social media was really big. So social media has really spurred on entrepreneurship. And so it wasn't quite top of mind as it is today for people. And I'm really grateful that I took the path that I did, because I gained so much expertise on my way to starting my own brand. So, but I always thought when I was little, our fun thing to do was play Office. So we always wanted to do something.
Me too, actually. Cool. So I want to understand how you went from working in a corporate office in Dallas. Like, what was the pathway to creating your own brand? And you ended up, like, you're based in New York. So what happened in between there?
So my personal life happened in between there. So I met someone, moved to New York to be with him, and my corporate job was not transferable. And so I moved up here and kind of switched sides of the table and went to work for Diamond, a major manufacturer within the jewelry industry, and worked there for a few years. And that's really, I got an even deeper experience because when I was at Zales, I initiated the sourcing organization for them. It's crazy to think that they didn't have a sourcing department they'd been around since 1924. But there was no sourcing department. It was all kind of done under the merchandising umbrella. And so we split it out and really became experts at sourcing and supply chain. And so then when I moved to New York, I was able to go even deeper and really dig into the manufacturing process and the development process, how things get turned from a 2D sketch into a 3D model, and the best way to manufacture certain things. And that's really kind of because that was in New York. I mean, the jewelry industry is, the nucleus is in New York City in America. So that was really where I started thinking, I can do this. I started meeting all these local manufacturers and workshops that make like the most beautiful jewelry for companies around the world. And I was like, I could do this. And then my family at the same time, because I would always get requests from friends and family, can you make my ring? Can you do this? Can you do that? And my family at the time was like, you're developing all these products and putting other designers' names on them, because we were doing a bunch of licensing at the time. And I was in charge of kind of vetting the licensing opportunities. And they're like, why don't you just do it yourself? And so then I was like, oh, maybe. And so that's kind of what spurred on. It kind of just happened on its own. It's not like I planned, like, in 5 years I'm going to start my brand.
Okay.
So.
And when you decided it was something that you wanted to embark on, did the development of the brand happen at the same time that you had your day job in New York? I was taking the time to figure out how to do it, because I started making my own things and actually putting my name on the inside of pieces in 2016. And so Instagram was a couple years old. Facebook had been around for a few years, but like when you were it's funny, for my experience, I was on the corporate side. I wanted nothing to do with social media. I was like, Facebook, no, I don't, that's strange. I still think it is. But then when I started this brand, I was like, oh, this is like the way that you market it. And so when I started the brand, I was like, I need to take a little time to figure out how to do this and what kind of budget I need. And, you have all these assumptions when you first start something, and then you learn very quickly what the reality.
Yeah, what the path actually is.
Out.
Yeah.
So what year would you say that you started Lindsey Scoggins, the brand?
So I incorporated in 2017. So okay. That's kind of the year. And it started, that's when I opened my studio and started having a place to host clients and having an actual safe to put goods in. And so that's when I got, kind of serious about it. I committed to it.
Okay. And when did it become your full-time? Was it in 2017 when you incorporated?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And what was your experience making your first couple sales? Like, I'm curious about how people found out about you. Was social media a part of your go-to-market strategy? I think high-end jewelry is a really interesting subset, I guess, of the jewelry industry. And I'm really curious about like your starting the brand and what led to your first sale. Yeah.
It's interesting because when I started, I said, I'm going to build a website. And I did a very quick website on Squarespace. And I was like, this is amazing. You can build a website in no time. And I made 5 pieces of jewelry. I found a jeweler on 47th Street who I had worked with at my previous job, just kind of doing some contracting work. And I went to them. I designed the pieces. I had all these connections, so I was able to source all the materials. And I made 5 pieces. And I knew I wanted really amazing photography. And photography is expensive. Good photography is expensive. So that my budget went into 5 pieces of jewelry that were not even that expensive for what I do now, and very expensive photography. And so I started a website. I started an Instagram page. And I was really surprised because I thought when I first started this, I was like, I'm going to get people that want a custom engagement ring. They're going to want something that, can be designed. And I had already done the couple of pieces that I did to start with, kind of had stories incorporated into them about how a couple met and how, an anniversary that they were celebrating and things like that, but still very inspired by like my architectural background. And so I was really surprised when I first started getting clients. They were all, friends of mine from Facebook that I hadn't seen in years. And they were like, oh, I remember you used to design stuff. Can you make me this? And that's when I started getting requests for actual custom designed stuff, which is like drawn by hand, painted on gouache type of things. And I was like, oh, okay, this is like women are really stepping up and, wanting to purchase their own heirloom items. And it surprised me at first. So I was like, that's not the market that I came from. It's not the segment of the market that I came from. And so that's why it took a couple of years for me to figure out like, this is what I can do. These are the customers that are gravitating towards what I actually do. And so I was always doing 18 karat and colorless diamonds, but the design quality I've really been able to elevate it based on what my clients know I can do now. But yeah, I was surprised that Instagram and Facebook, they were like, oh, I need you to make me this and this and that. And so it's been nice. Instagram hasn't been like a big focus for us because our price point has elevated so much. Instagram, as we grew, our price point went way up, and Instagram kind of became like, I always say Instagram is like the Us Weekly and the People magazine, and there is no town and country of social media. And so that's kind of the gap where we are.
So maybe talk a little bit about, for a lot of the people watching today, maybe people are so new to the jewelry industry. And you mentioned that the audience that you serve with Lindsey Scoggins is maybe very different from the market segment you came from. So maybe, do you want to illustrate for people listening in, give us a little illustration of the landscape of jewelry?
It's changed so much. And actually, I was just talking before we started about looking for data to illustrate how the consumer has shifted, the way that they purchase, and the way that distribution has shifted to accommodate that. So jewelry has, many tiers. There is, the Fifth Avenue, Madison Avenue jeweler, Cartier, Tiffany. I mean, there's so many amazing brands at the very high end. And then you've got what we call the majors here in the US, which are mostly found in malls. There's Zales, Jared, Kay, Helzberg, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's lots of independent jewelry stores, which are locally owned, they're, usually been around for several decades within their communities. So the independent jewelry stores that have, been around for so long and cultivated client bases within their communities, those have been shrinking because the way that consumers are now discovering products and brands is much more online through the emergence of social media, things like that. And in turn, the barrier to entry to starting a business is basically nothing. Even in the jewelry industry where the materials are so expensive and the technical knowledge is pretty vast and complex. Sometimes it's too complex for even us. But the number of independent jewelry stores, because they are physical locations based in one area, have shrunk over the years. And the number of independent designer brands like me have exploded. It's really become a lot more decentralized in the last 10 or 15 years. And so customers are now kind of able to reach out directly to whatever brand they discover and learn about them, follow them on social media, visit their website, see what they make, see if they're credible, and buy directly from them. So it's been, and e-commerce and social media have both just allowed that to happen.
Do you think that your pathway to starting your brand would have looked very different without social media, without this lowered barrier of entry? It sounds like you came from like a corporate background within jewelry. It sounds like maybe perhaps from like more of a major type of company.
Yeah. So we focused on, the middle market. And so when we developed assortments and programs and the product that goes into those, we really needed to make product that was very specific price points, very much value, very true to what we say it is in terms of quality, which is one thing I really appreciate about the corporate kind of environment is that we had really strict standards in place. And I find it's the Wild West in other places where you say you're going to do something, but it may not be that. Someone might not be doing the quality that they're saying they're doing. Yeah, so when I was with Zales, we were developing for lots and lots of people to buy. So we had to make product that appealed to many, many people. And then when I scaled way down and started working individually with customers, I could just make something that one person wanted. And I could make that one piece. I didn't have to invest in the inventory. That was my whole purpose, was not to invest in inventory, not because inventory turn is so slow in the jewelry industry. And the nice thing about our inventory is that the materials are reusable, unlike fashion where you don't necessarily have that opportunity to rework everything that you have. So there's always an inventory game that I didn't really want to play in the beginning. And so, but yeah, I had to evolve my customer experience to the individual, I guess.
So can you describe the Lindsey Scoggins customer?
So the Lindsey Scoggins customer is really independent, a really independent thinker. She's usually a little bit, typically my customers tend to be like between 35 and 45. So they've experienced their 20s, they've, built their careers, they've started their families, and now they're just ready to kind of celebrate themselves and be able to kind of reap the benefits of everything that they've done. But they're edgy, and I always kind of have these little esoteric details in my pieces, and they notice really fine details. So those are the clients that I tend to attract.
Great. And we actually have a connection in that Lindsey is a client of the agency that I work with, Chronix. And I know that you have a long relationship with our agency's founder, Amandeep, and he has had a hand in the shaping Lindsey Scoggins' digital presence and the experience customers have with your brand online. I would love to hear a little bit about how your website plays in your business and maybe talk a little bit about what makes you different, or rather what makes your website different from other jewelers' brands in your space that are targeting your market as well.
So I think the jewelry industry is not, it's a luxury product. So a lot of jewelry store, when I was with Zales, we had one of the highest performing websites in the country for jewelry. It's totally different than the website that I've built. So when I started building my website, I had experienced people finding me online, and I had a tiny little like portfolio website before. But for some reason, people had found me, and this was, pre-pandemic when the number of websites was much smaller, and so search was a little different. But I knew that if I could get people to the website, and I knew that people researched specifically engagement rings online before they engaged with anyone, I knew that if I could build a digital experience that didn't make them feel like they were being sold to, like they were being told, put it in the cart now, made them feel like they were able to learn about it and understand the process, then they could contact me and we could do the sale there. And so when I built the website, we built it in 2020. It was really about...
What a time also.
I know, it was crazy.
2020, pandemic.
And I was working with another company to build a 3D experience, which was really, really beautiful. And working with them was funny too, because
And the company 3Kit
is the company 3Kit. And working with them too was also, I think it was also an experience for them as well, because they had been building these, configurators are not in any way romantic or sexy at all. They're just like, pick your pieces and put it together and we'll show you. And so that's what it had been. They had been building them for like football helmets and
furniture and
yes.
So product configurator, this is a feature that would live typically on like a product page, or would be a tool that you build into your website. And it would be like a 3D rendering of the product that the customers could visualize on the page. They could select different variants of the product and then have that modeled on the site. So yeah, 3Kit. And I was a little bit part of this journey as well. Back in 2020, they had a lot of examples like with furniture and, like you said, football helmet, but you had obviously like a very different approach to setting up the configurator and like what you wanted, the experience you wanted to deliver to your customers. So definitely talk more about that.
Yeah, so I wanted to build this. So my customers were used to coming to me and I could sketch with them and just design certain things. And as I had built a customer base, I had developed these, what I called signature design elements, because an engagement ring always goes around your finger. It's always round. It's there's certain things that you can pick and choose, but the configurators that had been built up to that date were really very kind of clunky and didn't, it was more like giving the customer the keys to a Ferrari and not teaching them how to drive. And I wanted to chauffeur them through the experience. And so the configurator that we built really made the tech kind of invisible. That's what we had hoped, or that's what we kind of aimed for. So the customer was still able to kind of design it, but it sketched it for them as they made different selections. And there really wasn't a way to make an unattractive design, which can also be the case with other configurators. So we built that in 2020, and at the same time we were building the website to house it in. And my goal with the website was just to create an environment where they kind of understood that design was our priority, quality is our priority, and the customer experience, it needs to be, beautiful and result in just the most beautiful ring. So that's what we aim for. And I think, it turned out to be such a beautiful interface.
Great. And I would love to hear a little bit about how you approach messaging and marketing for your specific target audience. We're looking at women 35, 45, they've built their careers, they have some expendable income, they want something that is special, there's a focus on quality. How does that guide the copywriting on your website? How does that guide how you approach social media? I know that you mentioned that like Instagram is kind of like the Us Weekly. There's not a town and country for social media. So how do you reach people online?
So how we reach people online has honestly just been through SEO. We do a ton of content and we write, stories that actually relate to our product. So the first employee that I hired her specifically to write content. She was with W Magazine before. And I said, if I'm going to build a website, it's going to have actual stories on it that relate to what we make and the clientele that we're trying to attract. I didn't want to, SEO is always kind of nebulous.
Yeah. And just for the audience, SEO, that stands for search engine optimization.
Yes.
And when we're talking about SEO, we're talking about all those factors that search engines like Google consider when they're evaluating the ranking of a website on a search engine results page. So what would be a search term that your audience might be searching for, like custom engagement ring?
Custom engagement ring, New York City.
New York City.
Engagement ring designer, New York City. That's the kind of
And you
stuff.
can imagine that like the higher up you are on the search engine results page, the better your chances are of getting clicks and views and reaching that target customer ready to make a purchase that are like further down the conversion funnel. So language, like how you present yourself in your copywriting, is a huge impact, especially in your industry. But there's also, technical components too. So
right. So we really dug into SEO, making sure that our content strategy and the storytelling that we were doing, for people to actually read made sense. We've spent a lot of time figuring out what Google wants and how to work around that. It hasn't been, the most pleasant thing to figure out, Google really wants you to just make them buy it immediately or let them buy it immediately. And our product is not like that. We don't just have things you you can just add to cart. You have to configure it. You have to figure out what you want. So we have figured out ways to work with Google on that and like satisfy their needs and still not alienate our customer. Because I fully expected our average transaction value to go down when we launched the website. I assumed since we were going to be reaching more people, we would end up lowering that average transaction value, and it hasn't. It's actually during the pandemic, our average transaction value actually doubled.
Oh, wow.
And so SEO wasn't the only thing that was with, for people to discover us, but with clients that we do interact with, we have a weekly newsletter that we send out and we write.
And you worked with the same content writer across all channels.
Meredith, yeah.
Yeah.
And so she handles our weekly newsletter, and
I remember Meredith. She's cool. She's so great.
She lives in LA now.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so she is in charge of all of our content, and so she puts out a weekly newsletter to all of our clients, and we talk about custom pieces that we've done. We talk about new collections that we're developing or gemstones that we're excited about working with, things like that. And we have a really nice open rate. We have it's 38 to 47% open rate. And then we kind of bring all that together with in-person events. And so we do a lot of, no, we don't do a lot. We do a regular residency in Austin, Texas, and have clients come in, have a cocktail party for them, show them new items, show them loose gemstones, show them new designs, and then have a week of private appointments after that.
Great. So this podcast, I definitely want it to be used as a tool for younger women, femme-identifying folks who are navigating, starting their careers. I would love to hear any advice you have for folks. Maybe I've given your younger self.
Advice for my younger self. I think one thing, I think I mentioned it earlier, I benefited from being able to work for a larger company to learn all the ins and outs of an industry before I decided what I ultimately wanted to do. And that's still evolving. I mean, my experience here is now evolving into something new as well. But yeah, I think some advice I would give is learn as much as you can all the time. Always ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask anybody anything, but learn as much as you can and figure out, am I passionate about this industry and what part of it do I love? Because I've loved every stage of what I've done. I loved when I was in the sourcing organization. I loved when I was in merchandising. I didn't so much love working in a store. And, then I got to...
But you didn't know that until you did it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, mistakes are part of the game. And the more you know, the easier mistakes will be to get around.
And I think in my work on the agency side or working with brands and talking with entrepreneurs, business owners all the time, falling down is unavoidable part of the journey. And the longer you're in it, or even, the more successful you are in it, that often meant many, many times falling down. And your resilience and ability to get up again is really key to making it and having something that, a successful, sustaining business that you could be proud of. I really want to talk a little bit about what's new with Lindsey Scoggins, and you have some really exciting developments with the brand and the experience you want to give your customers. So would love for you to talk a little bit about that too.
Sure. It's kind of been born out of the experience that I have created for my customers when I work with a customer, so we have this beautiful website, we have this, catalog of product that they can browse through, but inevitably a customer that wants to spend a lot of money still wants a conversation. And so people contact us through the website and they say, what should I buy here? Or give me some ideas for this and this and this occasion. And so I created with Chronix this more of a back-end experience where we are able to take information that we have and create these beautiful proposals for customers. And then in addition to that, I created this whole production system that doesn't exist because I've looked everywhere for it. And, coming from the corporate side, you expect there to be a system to support your needs all the time. And being an independent designer and a, entrepreneur, you realize there's not all the time. And the number of designers that have just come into the industry in the last 10 years has created this need for technology to follow that. And so we are working on packaging the kind of that back end process and offering it to other designers.
So it's a tool for designers in the jewelry industry. And specifically, what problem are you solving? Like it's a back end
Every
tool.
problem.
Every problem.
Every problem. There's so many problems. So first of all, clienteling is really hard because it is an intimate conversation with a lot of back and forth, and it's a very important decision when they're making a major purchase. So we help with clienteling in terms of creating proposals for customers and converting that into a sale with, as little friction as possible. And then jewelry today is different than it was 15 years ago. Most jewelry stores today have some kind of custom option. Mm-hmm. Which wasn't really, when I was with sales, you buy inventory, you put it in a case, and they sell it. And that's still the case with many, many stores. But the emerging designers that have come into the industry in the last 10 years, they make things to order. And there is no production system that aids with that. And for every piece I make, there's between 7 and 15 invoices that I get from different vendors. And tracking those, getting them paid, there's different terms that you get them like slid under your door, you get them like folded up into an envelope and put in with a casting, and you have to like
couple that with how many orders you're doing.
Yeah, and you have to come back to your office and process all of those invoices, make sure they get paid, and then turn around and do the whole thing again with another client. And it really just reached a tipping point for me in 2022 when everything was just insane and customers were spending so freely. I had such a hard time keeping up with it. And then I was like, I have all these invoices. I don't know what they go with. And so the industry has a lot of work to do to update their kind of technological efficiencies. We're a really proud industry, and we hold our traditions very closely. So tech has always been kind of welcomed in different ways, but on the manufacturing side, for small businesses have never really had anything developed for them because there weren't as many. So yeah, that's what we're working on, packaging that so we can offer it to other players in the industry so that we can kind of build an ecosystem of efficiency.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. You are such a disruptive business owner and a great client to work with. And I really appreciate you being on my podcast and believing in my mission. And you were so sweet and nice, taking time out of your busy day to come to the East Village today.
Thanks for having me.
So I really appreciate it. I'm so excited to share about your really cool disruptive brand with our audience. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been great talking to you.
Great. Thank you.